mystery thing that that goes on that I don't think very many people know about. Now, those of us who are pay really close attention to politics knows Rand Paul and his dad, respectively, Ron Paul, talk a lot about ending the Federal Reserve. Well, what in the heck is it? So we're going to talk about what the Federal Reserve is, what role it has in the economy, and whether or not it's something that we should keep. And we're also going to talk about the details of Dr. Sabrin's book that he has coming out as well, because I think it will be highly beneficial. Now, if you want to know in advance some housekeeping items, if you'd like to know in advance who's going to be on my show, then the best way to do that is follow me on any of my social media. If you just Google at Money Talk with Melanie, somebody mentioned I was a guest on another show, and someone said she has a really strong, he was doing an intro, so she has a really strong web presence, and I was like, do I? Apparently, if you're on every social media known to man, that will give you a very strong web presence without having to pay Google an extra fee. for clicks or etc. Because literally, if you Google me, you'll find me everywhere. I'm on Google Plus, I'm on Pinterest. But if you'd like to follow me more directly, you can do so by liking my Facebook page, which is at Money Talk with Melanie. You can follow the show on Twitter, which is at Money Talk Mel. And I don't talk about this too much, but I love to talk politics, which is how I met Dr. Sabrin. And if you want to talk politics with me at any time, my Twitter handle is at NJ GOP Diva. I did not name myself the GOP Diva. My esteemed mayor nicknamed me that, and so I just kind of used it as my Twitter. Somebody actually already had GOP Diva, so I used NJ GOP Diva, which I quite love, actually. So you can follow me there at NJ GOP Diva if you want to talk politics, and especially you liberals that listen, you want to battle it out. I love talking to different people, and I'm very respectful. I have rules for how I do so. I don't believe in the name calling and the vitriol, some of the bad discussions that we have going on. I think that we can be have differing opinions and be respectful. Now, will you find some memes that make fun of you guys if you're a liberal? Well, yeah, because I have a sense of humor, but I tend not to be mean. And you could do so, with me on my thread if you like. Just show some decorum, okay? Just saying. Be nice. Nothing wrong with being nice. If you could be nice, that would be nice. That would be awesome. Anyway. So also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show and join my esteemed list of guests, such as Dr. Murray Sabrin, that I have with me this morning, I've had former senators, Senator Ted Harvey, Senator Elba Gilroy has been on the show. If you watch Fox News Specialist, you probably are familiar with Ebony K. Williams, Esquire. She has been a guest on the show a couple of times. Very kind of her to do so. Dr. Brooks Robinson of blackeconomics.org has also been on the show. If you'd like to join that esteemed list of guests, please do so by giving me a call at 937-756-6639. And credentials, send me the name of your book, what your expertise is in, anything, all things money, I will talk about. I will also talk about public policy that has to do with spending money. So if there's a subject matter that is a large part of our economy, barely deal with money, but it's a large part of the economy, I'd love to talk about it. Healthcare. I had Larry Tversky on the show Wednesday he's the CEO of TimerCap, but we were talking about the healthcare bill, which is about 20% of our economy. So anything having to do with money, which is practically everything, do give me a call about being a guest on the show. Now, 1 minute left. I've talked so much. I only have 1 minute left for the Money Talk News Report, but that's okay. What's going on in the Money Talk News Report? Well, Uber's back in the news. Apparently, do you remember, I don't know if you guys remember the former CEO, Travis Kalanick. He's being sued for fraud by by some of the biggest names in venture capital. Benchmark Capital is one of those, and this is according to Axios, a report from Axios. That's what's going on, and it seems he's also being accused of setting things up so that he can return to Uber. You know, I don't like the things that he's accused of doing, but on the flip side of that, you know, he was a founder, and anybody who knows anything about entrepreneurship knows that, you know, your company that you found is like your baby. So for him to get ousted is kind of like, it's kind of bad. That part of me, the entrepreneur in me, feels bad for him. But anywho, also President Trump is drafting some paperwork. My guess is an executive order or some type of announcement saying that the opioid epidemic is a national emergency. Now, anytime the government does this, believe me, that means they're about to spend a whole lot of money. And listen, we can say a lot of things about President Trump, but a conservative he is not. And I'm not suggesting that we don't spend money on the opioid epidemic. What I'm suggesting is that I fear that there's going to be a lot of money spent because DJT is not afraid to spend money. Most conservatives, usually conservatives are, but a conservative he is not. So, so it is what it is. When we come back, I already have Dr. Murray Sabrin on deck, and when we come back in a couple of minutes, we'll be talking to him, and I will have him on camera. So look forward to that. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
What part of United States government that the people in government do not understand? Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, it is rather disturbing to witness the large pushback President Trump has had to put up with simply because he wants to implement a merit-based legal immigration policy for our republic. To me, that makes perfect sense. If you want to immigrate to the United States, there should be a positive reason for us to let you in. After all, now that people throughout the world are better educated than most students in the U.S., the least they can do is expect to bring something positive to the table and not just come here to live off the American taxpayers. For those of you elected to represent we the people of the United States, you need to either live up to your oath to represent us and to defend the United States Constitution, or resign so that those who want to govern on behalf of America, not on behalf of some globalist watered-down America agenda, can help President Trump and we the people make America great again. Both Australia and Israel have implemented a merit-based immigration system that is very rewarding. It is past time for America the beautiful to do the same. I'm Ron Edwards. Blowing away the myths and revealing the truth. You can continue to blow away the myths with Ron Edwards on Facebook, Twitter, and theronedwards.com. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with one M.com.
And we're back. I want to thank the Tax Mama for being one of our sponsors this morning, aka Eva Rosenberg. If you have not been to her website, do yourself a favor and check out TaxMama.com. She has 2 award-winning books, Small Business Taxes Made Easy, and the other book is called Deduct Everything. She will also, when you go there, answer your tax questions for free. So if you have a tax question right now that is on your mind, that's bothering you, do go to TaxMama.com, go to her page, check her out. She will answer your tax questions, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me. And she's an expert in her field. She's been doing this for 20 some odd years now. As a matter of fact, it is about time. We're talking, they're writing some tax policy. It is probably time to have the Tax Mama back on the show, Ms. Eva Rosenberg. She's just a fantastic lady. Love her to pieces. So look forward to having, look for her soon, because I think it's time for us to have another chat. But without further ado, you should be able to see on screen, those of you who are looking at the video should be able to see on screen Dr. Murray Sabrin. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly? That's so important.
You get an A for pronunciation.
Yay! I will tell you, name pronunciation and remembering people's names is my Achilles heel. It's terrible, especially as a teacher, and you know that as a professor.
Absolutely.
But you know, as a professor, let's face it, they're just numbers. I know, is that terrible? That's the wonderful thing about being a professor, right? That's one of the things I like being an adjunct is like, I don't really have to know who you are. It's fine.
No, we try to know students' names, so I give them assigned seats now. This way, it's easier for me to remember with a seat chart.
Do you really? You do that?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Do they give you any pushback?
No, not really, because it's my classroom. I'm in charge. I'm the king of the universe.
That's true. I say the same thing. I call myself the queen of the classroom. Do what the queen says, and everything is going to be fine. But just do what I ask, and you'll get an A. It'll be all good. But anywho, I digress. I didn't talk about any of your background, so tell the audience about your background, please, and about what it is that you do at Ramapo College.
Sure. I grew up in New York City. We got married in 1968. We moved to New Jersey in 1977, so I've been in the Garden State for 4 decades. I got my undergraduate degree in history and geography and social studies education, my master's in social studies education, and my PhD in economic geography from Rutgers. I've worked at one of the country's oldest economic research organizations in the late 70s and their subsidiary in investments in the early 80s. We came back to New Jersey after I got laid off during the horrible 1981-82 recession, and I worked in commercial real estate, and then I got a job at Ramapo College in 1985. I've been there ever since, teaching corporate finance, securities, investments, and of course I recently developed the financial history of the United States, which I think is one of the most important things I've ever done in my life, because it gives students an opportunity to see how our nation evolved economically, business-wise, and why we've had these bubbles, which is the topic of our discussion today. These bubbles don't come out of the blue. They're not endemic in the free market economy, which is what Marxist and Keynesian economists tell us. Even monetarists believe that. Even supply-siders believe that to some degree. And it's the Austrian school that really has, I think, the most comprehensive, insightful analysis of how an economy works, how money is an important part of it, and that if you mess with money, so to speak, with the Federal Reserve and other regulations, you're going to get horrible outcomes. The good news is what Warren Buffett said, is that the economy has grown for more than 200 years because of free enterprise. That's what's made the economy great. I have a list of all the products and innovations and inventions that have been created the last 30 years. It has nothing to do with government. It's entrepreneurs. It's the people in Silicon Valley. It's the people in the biotech area. It's the people in all sorts of industries that have given us a high standard of living, and government should get out of the way and we'd have a much better standard of living. And so the impetus for writing this book on sabbatical last semester was Alan Greenspan's 1966 essay, Golden Economic Freedom, where he accurately criticizes the Federal Reserve for creating the bubble of the 1920s. And ironically, when he becomes Fed chairman in 1987, he does the same exact thing that the Federal Reserve did in the 1920s. And under his leadership, we've had 2 bubbles. The bubble of the dot-com era of the 1990s, and then he laid the foundation for the housing bubble, which Bernanke, when he took over in 2006, just expanded, and now we're in our 3rd bubble under Janet Yellen. So we have a situation where the economy, the real economy, grows because of capital investment, savings and investment, which make all these things possible, like the internet, like computers, like social media. But the government, through the Federal Reserve, gives us these bubbles because they believe, and this is something that's really crucial in what I write about, they believe they know how to manage the economy by manipulating interest rates. That, I think, is the $64,000 question.
Yes.
And in my book, I show conclusively, I believe, that they cannot manage the economy by manipulating interest rates. All it does is cause the subtitle of the book, which the title, as you know, is a very edgy title. The edgy title is Why the Federal Reserve Really Sucks.
Okay, that's cool.
And it really sucks because it creates inflation, recession, bubbles, and here's the most important social point. It enriches, and economic point, it enriches the 1%. And so I have data which show that the major benefits of the Federal Reserve accrue to the top people, like the Warren Buffetts, like all the hedge fund managers, who are able to trade because of the fluctuations in the financial markets, and they make oodles of money, and asset values go up like stocks. And so Buffett has masterfully done that over his 60-year career as a money manager.
And now, excellent explanation. I love that. I want you to go put your professor hat on and go back a tiny bit, right? I just want to explain two things in the most layman term possible.
Yeah.
When we talk about financial bubbles, what are we talking about? For those of us who are not, in that finance realm, what's a financial bubble? And then also explain, because there's a reason why what you said is true about the Federal Reserve benefiting the 1%. And I want you to explain that. I want you to explain like what the Federal Reserve is, more importantly, who they are, and and why it is that it tends to benefit the 1%. So first, let's talk about financial bubbles. You mentioned the financial housing bubble. You mentioned another bubble. So what do we mean when we talk about financial bubbles?
A bubble is basically when prices in general, or specifically in sectors like the .com sector, the housing bubble, stock markets, and now we have what Warren Buffett called the biggest bubble of all, the bond bubble, where bond prices have skyrocketed. So it's when over a period of time, prices really skyrocket. It looks like an Eiffel Tower. It'll go up and then it'll crash. That's what happened to the tech bubble in the late 90s, early 2000s. That's what happened to housing prices from the 2000s to 2008, and then it crashed. Now we're seeing stock prices from 2009 to the present have gone up basically in a straight line, and they will come down. When we can talk about that a little bit later, but a bubble is basically when prices are accelerating to the upside, what economists would call, or statisticians would call, a parabolic move. In other words, it looks like an Eiffel Tower going up, the left side of the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. Instead of fluctuating, which is...
Well, no, prices, see, this is the important point. Prices in general in a free market fall. So the example I like to give is a computer that I bought in 1984 for $2,000. It had only a 30 megabyte hard drive. Now it has probably 100 times more capacity, and it can probably get it for half the price.
Yeah, I eat 30 megabytes for breakfast. I just used 30 megabytes like in the last 10 minutes.
For example, 10 years ago when we moved from our house to our apartment co-op, we bought a 32-inch HD TV for $899. You can get that same TV for around $300 or less. So over time, a lot of high-tech items come down in price drastically, 50, 60, 70, 80%. Other prices should be either falling very slowly, 1%, 2% a year. Some prices will be flat. Some prices may go up a little bit, depending upon the specific individual supply-demand conditions for that particular good and service. But in general, prices reflect supply and demand. We all know that.
Right.
The Federal Reserve, by pumping money in, and here's what the crucial thing is, they believe by manipulating interest rates, by keeping the short-term rates down, that's going to generate good outcomes. Well, they can do that for a very short period of time, and then you get the bubble bursting, like we've had throughout American history, even before we had the Federal Reserve, because the banks were creating money. So the banks realized, because they work under a very unsustainable model, they take our money in deposits, short-term money, and they lend it long. So there's always imbalance between the money that they take in and the money that they're getting from loans. And so that's why you've had bankruptcies throughout Western civilization, because banks were borrowing short and lending long, and people would get a whiff that the banks didn't have the gold, because that's what the real money was back then.
Yes.
And the paper money was a claim to the gold in the banks. And checking accounts were the same thing. So when banks overexpanded, people got nervous. They went to the bank to get their money out. And guess what? The banks didn't have enough gold. If you saw that famous scene at the end of that wonderful movie, It's a Wonderful Life, people have a run on the Bailey Savings and Loans. And he explains, Jimmy
Stewart, right?
Explains to people, we don't have the money. The money is tied up in someone's house because we gave a mortgage to those people. So banks are in a very precarious situation. That was the word I was looking for. And so in comes the Federal Reserve in 1913 to protect the banks, to be a lender of last resort, to bail them out when they get into trouble. And we saw that enormously in 2007, 2008, when the Federal Reserve basically bailed out every single major bank in the country and helped banks around the world. So the central bank has something we all wish we had, which is what? An unlimited checking account.
Right.
So they buy government bonds and other assets. And so now they have $4.5 trillion of assets. How do they get the money? They basically just create it out of thin air. That money goes into the banking system. The banks now have excess funds, which they can loan out or they keep it on reserve. And the banks are sitting with over $2 trillion in reserves. That's why inflation has been relatively tame. They haven't been lending it out aggressively like they have in the past. And so therefore, people haven't had the extra buying power in the marketplace to bid up prices of goods and services that they need to expand their businesses and to pay higher wages. So inflation has been dampened because of three other things: Walmart, Amazon, and China. We've gotten a lot of cheap goods or goods for consumers. And so that's where the inflation has been pretty tame. But where have we seen inflation over the last 20, 30 years? Tuition, college tuition.
Yes, 400% it's up.
And here's the point. Sectors that are dependent upon government for a lot of resources have the highest rates of inflation over a long period of time. So there's a connection between the Federal Reserve and the economy in terms of which sectors are going to get the biggest bubble, if you will. Student loans, car loans. That's what we're seeing today. And this is because the Fed is distorting the economy. It's not allowing the marketplace to adjust supply and demand based upon real economic activity, but giving us this false prosperity, which always ends in a crash, whether it's the 1920s, whether it's the 60s, whether it's the 70s. We had two bubbles in the 70s, whether it's the end of the 80s, where we had the S&L crisis, the 90s, the dot-com, the 2000s, the housing, and now some people are dubbing this bubble the everything bubble. Because look at housing look at housing in New York City, in Silicon Valley. There are shacks in Silicon Valley that are going for $1 million. So, over the top in terms of the effect of easy money on the price structure in the economy. And what we're going to see now, I think, and it's starting to happen to a little degree, is if commodity prices start to rise, that would be the last indication that this bubble is coming to an end. And commodity prices have been pretty subdued because there's been great supply coming from China and third world countries because they need the earnings for their own economies.
Yes.
But if the money supply starts impacting those commodities, like copper, which is the key industrial commodity, steel, aluminum, agricultural products, that's when we'll see this bubble really take off, and that's when the Fed will get really nervous and put the brakes on. And that's when the adjustment will take place, the recession adjustment process.
And they've already sort of been inching up like a little at a time. Now, what Dr. Sabrin's talking about is he was talking earlier about artificial money being in the marketplace. And we used to hear this term a lot in the mainstream media called quantitative easing.
Yeah. That's just an academic term to saying they are legal counterfeiters.
Yes.
That's what they are. Print money, we go to jail. They print money, it's considered a social good.
Exactly.
It's not true. I mean, the average person suffers because of quantitative easing. Right now, we're at the sweet spot. Unemployment is as low as it's been in quite a long time.
16 years.
The stock market is at virtually an all-time high, even though with the correction yesterday we had. Bond prices are extremely high. Housing prices are through the roof. So you have everything inflated, and we know once you have something that's inflated, it's going to deflate eventually. And the question is when, and as the Fed keeps on raising interest rates and the money supply doesn't increase as much, that's when the adjustment takes place.
Exactly. Because supply and demand. That,
Absolutely,
you're back to that same, that same thing,
Well, this is the point. Prices have to reflect real economic activity, not false prosperity that the Fed has given us for the past 100+ years, because they think they're doing good for the economy, but what they're doing is using a false model, a model that doesn't reflect what the economy should be. They think they can manage what they call aggregate demand, In other words, the total spending in the economy. And I saw this throughout the my reading of the transcripts of Greenspan and Bernanke when they were testifying to the Congress twice a year as part of their duties as Federal Reserve Chairman from the 90s to Bernanke's tenure, and they kept on talking about our goal is to make sure that aggregate demand is high. Well, that means pumping more money into the system, which benefits primarily the 1%. That's why we've seen so many billionaires in the last 30 years in real estate, in stocks, and hedge funds, in other sectors of the economy, because all this money has to go someplace, and that's what drives up asset prices. And that's why people who understand this have participated in this to their benefit, but to the cost of the average worker whose real earnings have been flat now for nearly a generation.
Absolutely. And that's the other factor that we haven't talked about, which is, earnings being flat and why earnings are flat. And what we're talking about is when we say flat earnings, what we mean is people are not making any more money. They're not getting raises that are,
the real incomes are not going up. Their income may be going up in dollar terms, but what it can buy is not greater than they could buy 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Taxes go up constantly. We have sales tax have increased, even though it's gone down a little bit in New Jersey. Social Security taxes keep on going up because as you make more nominal dollars, you pay more Social Security and Medicare taxes. Let's see what other taxes have gone up. There's taxes on your cable bill, which most people don't know about. There's so many taxes on your cable bill.
Sin tax, huge.
Sin tax, cigarette taxes keep going up. That's one good reason to stop smoking, even though that's not a primary reason. It's just very bad for you.
Yeah.
What other taxes keep on going up? Property taxes.
I was going to say in New Jersey, property taxes are sky
every year
high.
they go up, guaranteed 2% a year. So if you're making a 2% salary increase, it's basically being taken away by your property tax increases and the other taxes that you pay, Social Security and Medicare. So for the average worker, the people in America that's making between $30,000 and $100,000, they're just treading water. They really are. And it's a shame because if people knew what was happening, and that's why Ron Paul did so well in his two runs for president. He was exposing the Fed like no one else has in modern history. And if Bernie Sanders understood it, he probably would have won the nomination. If he said the 1% is doing so well. Well, why? It's because primarily the Federal Reserve. And if he had explained that, either he doesn't understand it or he didn't want to ruffle any feathers on Wall Street, but he wasn't getting their support anyway. So I don't know why he didn't take that mantle from Ron Paul and say, listen, we have a system that benefits people because of the Fed's money printing operations. If he had said that, he would have probably gotten a lot of Ron Paul supporters, even though he's bad on healthcare and other issues. But for some reason, he just really dropped the ball on that. He could have said that Hillary Clinton is a tool of Wall Street because Wall Street benefits from the Federal Reserve's easy money policy. People would have applauded him, and if he explained it, I think he would have won the nomination. Not to say that I wanted him president, but at least he would expose the Federal Reserve and what they're doing. So I'm hoping with my book, I can enlighten more people with the truth about what's going on, because Greenspan 50 years ago in 1966 wrote this wonderful essay, as I pointed out earlier, that exposed the Fed for what it does. It creates bubbles, and it created one of the biggest bubbles in human history in the 1920s. And then we had a massive tech bubble, and then a housing bubble. And now, again, we're coming to the end of the road of this bubble. And there are some indicators that I follow that will reveal when this next bubble is about to burst. One is interest rates, what's called the inverted yield curve, where short-term rates go above long-term rates. And historically, when that happens, it's about a year later that the recession begins and the bubble bursts. So I have some data in my book that show that. And then we have the unemployment data. When unemployment reaches a peak, it's a bottom of the stock market. And when it reaches a trough, like now, it's usually at the peak of the stock market. So there's an interesting inverse correlation between interest rates and the stock market. There's another one. When there's easy money, when there's low interest rates, what do people do? They speculate. They borrow money to buy stocks. That has gone through the roof like it did in the 1990s and the 2000s. And when that starts to roll over, that's when the stock market reaches a peak and starts heading down. So I'm monitoring that very carefully. Right now, it's at an all-time high. The debt on borrowed money for stocks. So people are speculating. This is what bubbles do during easy money, quantitative easing. People speculate, whether it's housing, whether it's stocks, whether it's a whole host of other things. All sorts of scams are out there. You see that also in bubbles. There's a lot of scams on the telephone and on emails, what have you. So people see people have money, and therefore they're going to try to get it, not working for it, but committing fraud. And the biggest fraud is the Federal Reserve.
I was about to say, very similar to our federal government.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve and the federal government work hand in hand. And there's another element to the Federal Reserve, which most people don't want to talk about. In other words, the Federal Reserve and other central banks really makes war possible.
Oh, okay. You hold that thought, because that's a big deal. And we're up against a break. So we're going to talk about what you mean by that in about 5 minutes. We're going to go to break. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. We'll be back in a couple of moments with Dr. Murray Sabrin.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, it's Sean from the Sackheads Radio Show. Also one of the owners here at the SHR Media Network. Are you opinionated? Have you ever wanted to do your own show? Have you ever heard somebody like the Sackheads and go, yeah, I could probably do that better? Well, now's your chance. Send me a 5-minute clip at sackheadsradio@gmail.com, and maybe you can be part of the SHR broadcast. sackheadsradio@gmail.com.
Times are dark. The people are misled by corrupt politicians, lied to by establishment media, and deceived by the false messages of Islam. A nation looking for direction needs a guide. It needs a man with a cane. I'm Dave Miller. Join me on Spreaker, SHR Media, Pundit Press Radio, and YouTube through the SHR Media page for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because the truth is not always pleasant.
Hey, this is Mim from Freedom Fest, the world's largest gathering of free minds. Join your friends from SHR Media at the beautiful Paris Resort in Las Vegas, Nevada, July 19th through the 22nd for 3 amazing days of liberty-oriented discussion, investment advice, and the Anthem Film Festival. It's our big 10th anniversary, featuring keynote speaker William Shatner and Freedom Fest favorites, including Steve Forbes, Jim Rogers, Lee Edwards, David Boaz, Doug Casey, Dinesh D'Souza, John Stossel, Lisa Kennedy, Grover Norquist, Peter Schiff, and many more. Don't miss out. Register at freedomfest.com for $100 off the regular registration rate when you use the all-caps code SHR Media.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Taxes. Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with 1M.com.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on New Day, Black and Red.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe, Hook Reaver, Common Sense. You can catch me every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com. That's every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, shrmedia.com.
The best late night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work there too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best late night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio. The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Okay, we are back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And I lost my video feed of Dr. Sabrin, but I think I got him back on audio. Can I hear you? Can you hear me at all? Let me see. I see him, but I don't hear him. I'm actually going to try to get him on the phone real quick so that we can finish our conversation, because it was a good one. Because one of the things that he just said was that one of the things that the Federal Reserve does is makes war possible. And I definitely want to get his insights on what he meant by that. So I'm going to give him a call real quick and see if I can get him on the phone to explain that to us, because it was a really very important point that I want my audience to understand. And if we lose him, if I don't get him, I'm going to make sure that I definitely bring him back, because unfortunately I lost my video feed. So, but that's okay. It doesn't seem like I'm going to be able to get him unless.
Welcome to Verizon voice message.
Unless he calls me back real quick, but that's okay. Anyway, we were talking about the Federal Reserve. These things happen when you're doing live radio. Reserve, and Dr. Sabrin was explaining to us how the Federal Reserve contributes to war, and one of the ways is by putting the excess money into the economy that it puts into the economy, and it's just a bad deal all the way around. If you want to get in touch with Dr. Maurice Sabrin and you want to buy his book, I want to give you the name of the book. I want to make sure that I do that. The book is not out yet, but it is coming out soon. And I just want to go and check real quick on the name of his book. But his book is about the economic bubbles that we described earlier, and about how to predict them coming. And he was giving us a couple of predictors that he had in mind, but that's what his book talks about. And another thing that he does is he teaches the history of finances here in the United States. I'm going to make sure that I couldn't find the name of his book, so I'm going to make sure that, he told us the name of the book. But pardon me, I'm also going to make sure that I put it in the chat. I think it's going to be a very interesting book, and I'm excited about it. And one of the big things that we need to know is the history of what it is that we're doing, and that's what the book talks about: the history of economics and finance and the federal government's role in it. So very excited about that coming out. I'm going to make sure that I post that when I post the podcast. Now, and I apologize to Dr. Murray Sabrin about losing his feed. That stinks. But I'm going to post all his information in the podcast. I'm going to make sure that I do that. And I really appreciate Dr. Sabrin coming on the show this morning. Now for your 5 minutes of personal finance, we're going to talk about some different ways that you can save money that are small ways that you can save a couple bucks, right? And you know, there are many ways. Some of these are, you know, your basics that you probably already knew but didn't want to do, which I completely get. And some of these are a little bit outside the box that you probably knew about but never bothered to do. First and foremost, create a budget. I know it hurts, and I've talked about this before, and it's very painful, but creating a budget is very, very important in making sure that you save money. There is money. You literally have vacuums in your budget that you don't know you have until you start keeping a budget, until you make a budget and monitor your spending. So it's very important to make a budget. And if you're not sure, I used to teach financial literacy in high school. And that was one of the things that I taught was how to make a budget. If you're not sure how to make a budget, Google it. I highly recommend Pinterest, because Pinterest not only will direct you to websites for how to make a budget, but it will also give you unique ideas with how to create a budget and how to save. So I highly recommend that. But, and there are some things that people don't know about budgeting, which is, for example, like, how do you budget those things that are per quarterly? How do you put that into your budget? Well, one of the ways that you can do that is amortize it monthly if you're doing a monthly budget. Those are the things I think people forget from high school. And quite frankly, most high schools don't teach financial literacy anymore. I was very fortunate to work in one that did. A budget, look up how to do one if you're not familiar with one. It really is quite simple. And once you stick to one, you'll know where all your money is. Secondly, once you get a budget, make sure you put somewhere in your budget to start a savings account. Now, with modern technology being with what it is, there are ways to start a savings account online where you can pay yourself first, which is a very old classic way of saving money. But upgraded version of that is you can have money taken out of your account automatically on payday and put into a savings account first by making sure that you have that automated money coming out so that you don't even miss it, that it goes right into your savings account, and before you know it, you're going to have a whole bunch of money in your savings account. Stop impulse buying is another one. There's a reason why stores put all the little tchotchkes in the checkout aisle, and they put those things. They're very strategically placed near the checkout so that while you're waiting, they're hoping that you're going to have an impulse buy and you're going to buy what's there. And it adds up to millions of dollars for most companies, but it also can add up to a lot of dollars out of your budget when you're buying something that is not in your budget. Let's think about it this way. Let's just say that you go to the supermarket, I don't know, twice a week, and you impulse buy a candy bar every time you go to the supermarket, or the grocery store, I guess it's called now. I'm dating myself. Every time you go to the grocery store, you buy a candy bar, and a candy bar is $2, okay? If you go to the market twice a week and you impulse buy that $2 candy bar twice a week, that's what? 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 for 4 weeks is 16. That's $16 a month, which adds up yearly that you just spent on only candy bars. So that's how the impulse buying thing works, and many of us do it, but we have to be really careful. Now, this is a really difficult one. It's coming up as well. Cut up your credit cards. Stop using your credit card. Put yourself on a cash diet. I've talked about this in previous shows. You can use something that's called the envelope method, which is where you literally take all the cash that you have to spend, you put it in separate envelopes, you label them, and you literally only spend out of those envelopes. Like I said, it's very difficult to discipline ourselves this way, but sometimes we must if we want to stick to a budget. Now, here are some a little bit out of the box ways to save money coming up. Save your change. I do that all the time. I keep a little bucket in my car where I save change, and when things get a little bit tight, I consult my change, which adds up. You'd be surprised how much your change adds up, especially if you just, put it in this one container, and when you need it, you have it there. Carpooling. If you have friends that live in the same neighborhood that you live in, and you commute to the same place or very similar places, nothing wrong with carpooling, and that can save you a lot of money on gas, wear and tear on your car, etc. Cook at home. That's another a price saving thing to do. It's a little bit out of the box because we're so used to having the convenience of buying now, and we're so busy, and we want to do the fast food thing, and we want to enjoy ourselves eating out. But cooking at home is definitely a way that you're going to save money. There are several other tips. I'm looking at an article that I found on Pinterest that actually gives you 52 ways small ways to save more money, and I'm going to pin that to my Pinterest page so that you're able to take a look at it, because there are many, many more choices and more things that you can do to save money. That was your 5 minutes of personal finance, and I actually kept it to 5 minutes. I'm very proud of myself. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette, and we will be back in a few moments.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with 1M.com.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on New Day, Black and Red.
Hey, it's Jersey Joe from the Reaver, Common Sense. You can catch me every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on shrmedia.com. That's every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, shrmedia.com.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And I want to thank Dr. Murray Sabrin for being on the show today. I'm going to post all his information about his book and where you can purchase it with my post for the podcast. And I want to thank Dave Milner in the chat and Kel, who was in the chat as well. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Always enjoy your company and your commentary. And Mr. Reviewer, who is not showing their name in the chat. I'm assuming it's the CIA looking on me, or the NSA or somebody. I want to thank everybody for listening as well. Please do remember that all of this is important because it's your money. Have a great weekend.